Thank you, Mr. President, for having us here in Damascus, the capital of Syria. I think this is the first interview you have with the Chinese media after the national ceasefire and after so many fresh round of talks, both in Astana and Geneva. And of course, after US President Donald Trump's inauguration. And these days, as we have seen, your troops are making steady progress in the battlefields. But peace talks do not seem just as productive. So as far as the Geneva talks is concerned, your chief negotiator, Mr. Jaffery, was trying hard to find out who should be sitting on the other side of the negotiation table. So according to your idea, who should be sitting there?
You're right, this is a very crucial question. If we want those negotiations to be fruitful, we have to ask who's going to be sitting there. I mean, there could be a lot of good people with good intentions, but the question is, who do they represent? That's the question. In this situation, you have different groups. You have people who are let's say, patriotic, but they don't represent anyone, they represent themselves. You have others who represent the terrorists, and you have terrorists on the table. And you have others who represent the agenda of foreign countries, like Saudi Arabia, like Turkey, like France and UK, and maybe the United States. So it's not a homogeneous meeting. If you want it to be fruitful, going back to the first point that I mentioned, it should be a real Syrian negotiations. In spite of that, we went to that meeting because we think any kind of dialogue could be a good step toward the solution, because even those people who are terrorists or belonging to the terrorists or to other countries, they may change their mind and go back to their normality by going back to being real Syrians, detach themselves from being terrorists or agents to other groups. That's why I say we didn't expect Geneva to produce anything, but it's a step and it's going to be a long way, and you may have another round, whether in Geneva or in Astana.
But anyway, it is an intra-Syrian talks, right? But the matter of the fact is, it is a proxy dialogue. I mean, main parties do not meet and have dialogue directly.
Exactly.
So are you personally satisfied with the current negotiation format or mechanism?
We didn't forge this mechanism. It was forged by de Mistura and the UN with the influence of the country that wanted to use those negotiations in order to make pressure on Syria not to reach any resolution. As you just said, each one represents different agenda. Even the opposition delegations, it wasn't one delegation, different delegations of the opposition. So if I'm going to, as a government, if I'm going to negotiate with with someone, who's going to be? Which one? Who represents who? That's our question. So you are right. This time there was no negotiations in Geneva, and this is one of the reasons. That's why it didn't reach anything. The only thing that we discussed in Geneva was the agenda, the headlines. What are we going to discuss later? That's it.
But as we see, a lot of times, money, energy have been put into this effort,
Exactly.
and the clashes are still going on. People are still dying, and the refugees are still increasing.
Exactly.
What is the possible way of having a negotiation?
Again, you are correct. The more delay you have, the more harm, destruction, and killing and blood you'll have within Syria. That's why we are very eager to achieve a solution. But how and which way, you need to have two parallel ways. The first one is to fight the terrorists. And this is our duty as government, to defend the Syrians and use any means in order to destroy the terrorists who is killing and destroying Syria. The second one is to make dialogue. This dialogue has many different aspects. You have the political one, which is related to the future of Syria. What political system do you need? What kind? It doesn't matter which one. It depends on the Syrians, and they're going to have a referendum about what they want. The second part is to try to bring many of those people who was affiliated to the terrorists or who committed any terrorist acts to go back to their normality and lay down their armaments and to live normal life in return for amnesty that has been offered by the government. And we've been going in that direction for 3 years, and it worked very well. It worked very well. So actually, if you want to talk about the real political solution since the beginning of the crisis of the war on Syria till this moment, the only solution was those reconciliations between the government and the different militants in Syria. Many of them joined the government now, and they are fighting with the government. Some of them laid down their armaments and went back to their normal life.
But talking about the Syria war, you can never exclude foreign factors. The Saudi-backed High Negotiation Committee, HNC, are saying that they are counting the Trump administration to play a positive role instead of mistaken policies under his predecessor, Barack Obama. So from your side, what do you expect from Trump's Middle East policy, particularly policy on Syria?
Yeah. The first part that you mentioned about their hopes, when you pin your hopes on a foreign country, doesn't matter which foreign country, it means you're not patriotic, and this is proof, because they should depend on the support of the Syrian people, not any other government or administration. Now, regarding the Trump administration, during his campaign and after the campaign, the main rhetoric of the Trump administration and the president himself was about the priority of defeating ISIS. I said since the beginning that this is promising approach to what's happening in Syria and in Iraq, because we live in the same area and we face the same enemy. We haven't seen anything concrete yet regarding this rhetoric, because we've been seeing now certain different kind of attacks, military raids against ISIS, which is a local kind of raids. You cannot deal with terrorism on local basis. It should be comprehensive. It cannot be partial or temporary. It cannot be from the air. It should be in cooperation with the ground on the troops. That's why the Russians succeeded, since they supported the Syrian army in pushing ISIS to shrink, not to expand as it used to be before that. So we have hopes that this administration in the United States is going to implement what we've heard, taking into consideration that talking about ISIS doesn't mean talking about the whole terrorism. ISIS is one of the products. Al-Nusra is another product. You have so many groups in Syria that they're not ISIS, but they are Al-Qaeda. They have the same background of the Wahhabi extremist ideology.
So, Mr. President, you and Mr. Donald Trump actually share the same priority, which is counterterrorism. And both of you hate fake news. Do you see any room for cooperation?
Yeah, in theory, yes, but practically not yet, because there's no link between Syria and the United States on the formal level. Even their raids against ISIL that I just mentioned, which are only few raids, happened without the cooperation or the consultation with the Syrian army or the Syrian government, which is illegal, as we always say. So theoretically we share those goals, but practically not yet.
Do you have personal contact with the United States, President of the United States, or direct or indirect?
Not at all. Indirect, you have so many channels, but you cannot bet on private channels. It should be formal. This is where you can talk about direct, real relation with another government.
As we speak, top generals from Turkey, Russia, and the United States are meeting somewhere in Turkey to discuss tensions in northern Syria, where mutually suspicious forces are allied with these countries. So do you have a plan for a final attack on Daesh when the main players actually do need an effective coordination in order to clear Syria of all terror groups?
Yeah, if we want to link that meeting with ISIS in particular, we won't be objective because at least one party, which is Turkey, has been supporting ISIS till this moment because Erdogan, the Turkish president, is Muslim Brotherhood. He's ideologically linked and sympathetic with ISIS and with al-Nusra. And everybody knows about this in our region, and he helped them either through armament, logistically, through exporting oil. For the other party, which is the United States, at least during Obama administration, they dealt with ISIS by overlooking their smuggling the Syrian oil to Turkey. And this is how they can get money in order to recruit terrorists from around the world. And they didn't try to do anything more than cosmetic against ISIS. The only serious party in that regard is Russia. Russia, which is effectively attacking ISIS in cooperation with us. So the question, how can they cooperate? And I think the Russian, they have hope that the two parties join the Russians and the Syrian in their fight against terrorism. So we have more hopes now regarding the American party because of the new administration, while in Turkey nothing has changed in that regard. ISIS in the north have the only one route of supply is through Turkey. And they're still alive, and they're still active, and they're still resisting different kind of raids and attacks because of the Turkish support.
And now U.S. troops are in Manbij.
Yeah.
Is the green light from your side? Did you open the door for these American troops?
No, we didn't. Any foreign troops coming to Syria without our invitation or consultation or permission, they are invaders, whether they are American, Turkish, or any other one. No, we don't. And we don't think this is going to help. Well, what are they going to do? To fight ISIS? The Americans lost nearly everywhere. They lost in Iraq. They had to withdraw at the end. Even in Somalia, let alone Vietnam in the past, and Afghanistan, your neighboring country.
Right.
They didn't succeed anywhere they sent troops. They only create mess. They are very good in creating problems and destroying, but they are very bad in finding solutions.
Talking about Russia and China, they just vetoed a new UN sanction on Syria last week. What do these Chinese vetoes mean exactly for your country?
Let's be very clear about their position, which is not to support the Syrian government or the Syrian president, because in the way they try to portray it as a personal problem, and as Russia and China and other countries in Iran support that person as president. It's not the case. China is member of the Security Council, and it's committed to the Charter of the United Nations. In that veto, China has defended, first of all, the Charter, because the United Nations was created in order to restore stability around the world. Actually, the Western countries, especially the permanent members of the Security Council, they are trying to use the United Nations and the Security Council as a tool or mean in order to change regimes or government, to implement their agenda, not to restore stability, actually to create more instability around the world. So the second part, that China restored the stability in the world by creating some kind of political balance within the United Nations, of course in cooperation with Russia, which is very important for the rest, for the whole world. Of course, Syria was the headline, the main headline. This is good for Syria, but again, it's good for the rest of the world. Third, the same country that they wanted to use the UN chart for their own vested interests are the same country who interfered or tried to intervene in your country in the late 90s. And they used different headlines, human rights, and so on. And you know that. And if they had the chance, they would change every government in the world, whether big country or small country, just when this government tried to be a little bit independent. So China protected the Chinese interests, Syrian interests, and the world interests, especially the small countries or the weak countries.
if I'm not mistaken, you said China is going to play a role in reconstruction of Syria. So in which areas you think China can contribute to bring Syrian people back to their normal life after so many years of hardships?
Yeah, actually, if you talk about what the terrorist has been doing during the last 6 years, it's destroying everything regarding the infrastructure. In spite of that, the Syrian government is still effective, at least by providing the minimum needs for the Syrian people. But they've been destroying everything in every sector with no exception. Adding to that, the Western embargo in Syria has prevented Syria from having even the basic needs for livelihoods of any citizen in Syria. So I think in which sector, in every sector, I mean, China can be in every sector with no exception because we have damage in every sector. But if we talk about now, before this comprehensive reconstruction started, China now is being involved directly in building many projects, mainly industrial projects in Syria, and you have many Chinese experts now working in Syria in different projects in order to set up those projects. But of course, when you have more stability, the most important thing is building the destroyed suburbs. This is the most important part of the reconstruction. The second one is the infrastructure. The sanitation system, the electricity, the oil fields, everything with no exception. The third one, the industrial projects, which could belong to the private sector or the public sector in Syria.
All right. And it seems no secret that there are some Chinese extremists are here fighting alongside Daesh. I think it is a threat both to Syria and China. What concrete or effective measures do you have to control border and prevent these extremists from free movement in the region?
When you talk about extremists or terrorists, it doesn't matter what their nationality is, because they don't recognize borders and they don't belong to countries. The only difference between nationality and nationality, that those, for example, who came from your country, they know your country more than the others, so they can do more harm in your country than others. The same for the Syrian, the same for the Russian terrorists, and so on. So now the measure, every terrorist should be defeated and demolished, unless he changed his position to the normal life. Second, because you're talking about different nationalities, more than 80 nationalities, you should have cooperation with the others' government, especially in the intelligence field. And that's what's happening, for example, with the Chinese intelligence regarding the Uyghur terrorists who's coming from China through Turkey. Unfortunately, the only mean that we don't have now and we don't control is our border with Turkey, because the Uyghur in particular, they came from Turkey. The others coming from maybe from Iraq, from Jordan, from Lebanon, from the sea maybe, and the majority from Turkey. But the Uyghur terrorists coming mainly from Turkey. Why? I don't know why, but they had the support of the Turkish government, and they were gathered and collected in one group, and they were sent to the northern part of Syria. So the measure now is to attack them wherever they existed. Of course, sometimes you cannot tell which one, who is who. They mix with each other, but sometimes they work as separate groups from different nationality, and this is very crucial kind of cooperation between the Syrian and Chinese intelligence, and we did many good steps in that regard.
Mr. President, as you're fully aware that the White Helmet took an Oscar this year for the best documentary short. Yeah. But folks are saying that the truth about this White Helmet is not like what Netflix has presented. So what is your take on this?
First of all, we have to congratulate Al-Nusra for having the first Oscar. This is a precedented event for the West to give Al-Qaeda an Oscar. Wow. This is unbelievable. And this is another proof that Oscars, Nobel, all the things are politicized certificate. That's how I can look at it. The white helmet story is very simple. It's a facelift of al-Nusra Front in Syria, just to change their ugly face into more humanitarian face. That's it. And you have many videos on the net, and of course image broadcasted by the white helmet that condemn the white helmet as a terrorist groups, where you can see the same person wearing the white helmet and celebrating the dead body of Syrian soldiers. So that's what the Oscar went to those terrorists. So it's a story just to try to prevent the Syrian army during the liberation of Aleppo from more making pressure on the attacking and liberating the districts within the city that's been occupied by those terrorists, to say that the Syrian army and the Russians are attacking the civilians and the innocents and the humanitarian people.
Right. Now, Palmyra. I took a one-day trip to Palmyra this time. Now the city is under your control. As far as its strategic position is concerned, because Homs is the heart of Syria, it's right in the middle. Now, when you have Palmyra, what is your next target? Are you going to expand the military operation into Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor?
Yeah. We are very close to Raqqa now. Yesterday, our troops reached the Euphrates River, which is very close to Raqqa city. And Raqqa is the stronghold of ISIS today. So it's going to be a priority for us for these two reasons. But that doesn't mean the other cities are not priority in time. That could be in parallel, because Palmyra is on the way to Deir ez-Zor city on the eastern part of Syria, which is close to the Iraqi borders. And those areas that has been used by ISIS as a route for logistic support between ISIS in Iraq and ISIS in Syria. So whether you attack the stronghold or you attack the route that ISIS uses, it has the same result.
How many days do you think this war is going to last?
If we presume that you don't have foreign interventions, it will take a few months. It's not very complicated internally. The complexity of this war is the foreign interventions. This is the problem. So now, what in the face of that intervention, the good thing that we gained during the war is the unity of the society. At the very beginning, the vision for many Syrians wasn't very clear about what's happening. Many believed the propaganda of the West about the reality, about the real story, that this is again the operation. If it's again the operation, why the people in Saudi Arabia didn't revolt, for example. So now what we gain is this. This is our strongest foundation to end that war. We always have hope that this year is going to be the last year. But at the end, this is war. You can't expect it. You can't expect what's going to happen precisely.
And Mr. President, you are a president of the Syrian Republic. At the same time, you are a loving husband and a father of three. How can you balance the role of being a president, a father, and a husband?
If you cannot succeed in your small duties, which is your family, you cannot succeed in your bigger duty or more comprehensive duty at the level of a country. So there's no excuse that if you have a lot of work to abandon your duties. It's a duty. You have to be very clear about that. You have to fulfill those duties in a very good way. Of course, sometimes those circumstances not allow you to do whatever you have to do. Your duties fully, let's say.
For 24 hours, how many times you spend on work and how many times you spend with your family members?
Actually, it's not about the time, because even if you are at your home, you have to work.
Okay.
So let's say in the morning and the evening, you have the chance. But in between and after those times, you have the whole day to work.
Have you ever thought of leaving this country for sake of your family?
Never. After 6 years, I mean, the most difficult times passed. It was in 2012. and 13. Those times we never thought about it. How can I think about it now? So no, this is not optional. Whenever you have any kind of reluctance, you will lose. You will lose not with your enemies, you will lose with your supporters. Those support, I mean, the people you work with, the fighters, the army, they will feel if you're not determined to defend your country. We never had any fear, neither me nor any member of my family.
And how is Karim's Chinese getting along?
He learned the basics of Chinese language, I think 2 years ago. Unfortunately, the lady and the man who taught him, they had to leave because they were members of the Chinese embassy. They went back to China now. He stopped, but I'm sure when he's getting older, he had the basic now and he can improve his Chinese language.
Do you think it's a good choice to learn Chinese for him?
Of course, because China is rising power.
So you didn't force him to learn Chinese. It's his own option, right?
No, we never thought about it actually. I didn't think that he has to learn Chinese, and I didn't expect him, if I thought about it, that he would say yes. Because for many in the world, the Chinese language is a difficult language to learn. He took the initiative and he said, I wanted to learn Chinese. Actually, actually till this moment, I didn't ask him why. I want him to feel free. But when he's getting old, I'm going to ask him, how did it come to your mind to learn this language, this difficult language, but of course, important language.
You didn't ask him before?
No, not yet.
So you think it's a good choice?
Of course. As I said, it's a rising power. It's important now. I mean, most of the world have different kind of relation with China, whether in science, in politics, in economy, in business. I mean, in every field you need it now. And our relation for the future is going to be on the rise. It was good, but it's going to be on the rise because when a country like China proves that he's a real friend that you can rely on, it's very natural to have better relation on the popular level, not only on the formal level.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming to Syria. You're most welcome.